All right, we are officially recording. So the slide deck will be available on our website. We'll send it to everybody who's registered to participate today, and the actual presentation will be recorded and on our website as well. So again, thank you for joining us today to learn a little bit more about Community Business Launch. We are probably all very familiar with this. We've been doing some Zoom meetings and Google Meet meetings for 2 years now, but for those that may be a little unfamiliar with Google Meet, you can mute yourself and turn your camera on and off at the bottom panel. You can also see kind of who is in the room. And then if you have any questions along the way, you can enter them into the chat box. I will try to catch them as I'm going along, but I will make sure to go back at the end to answer any questions that I may have missed. And then, of course, if you're able, we would request that you keep yourself on mute just so there is no additional background noise or distractions. So we're going to talk a little bit about the general CBL overview today, what organizations are eligible to apply, how we score those applications that we receive and make the awards, how you can apply online through our centralized application management system, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for any questions that you may have that I didn't answer. So from a very broad view, Community Business Launch is a place-based entrepreneurial development grant program that focuses on critical mass or a designated territory of priority with vacant storefronts and available properties in your community. And so the point is to fill those storefronts and properties with expansion or startup ventures that meet your very specific market-based needs and strategies. The hope is to get your local entrepreneurs, creatives, and small business owners that have completed the business planning curriculum to also compete in a pitch night in front of a panel of judges. And then ultimately, those selected for winning the pitch competition will receive cash and in-kind prizes to kickstart their venture and in the identified designated area. CBL has actually gone on since 2015 when we started the program with 3 pilot communities. That was Gloucester, Hopewell, and Stanton. And since then, we've had 33 communities served in total, over 70 businesses created, over 30 businesses expanded, and more than 200 jobs created across the Commonwealth. One thing that we really like to tout about the Community Business Launch program is that we have a 77% success rate. So for those of you that may not know, the average success rate, the average failure rate for startup businesses is 90%. So 9 out of 10, or 1 out of 10 will be successful, sorry. But with Community Business Launch, entrepreneurs that go through the program, we've seen generally 7 out of those 10 businesses be successful, not only opening that business, but being successful over the long term. So we like to showcase a little bit. This screenshot here is maybe just a third, maybe even just a fourth of the businesses that have opened as a result of Community Business Launch in communities across the state. And I think the best way to kind of talk about CBL is to give specific examples of how it has transformed communities that have participated. So one that I often like to highlight is Wytheville. So Wytheville, for those of you who maybe haven't been there, they opened a boutique hotel. Gosh, the date escapes me, but it was a couple of years before their CBL in 2018. And they really wanted to create some activities for people who are coming out of the area and staying in the downtown to have to do and spend their money locally. And so as part of their Community Business Launch, they were really hoping to get a brewery. And actually, they ended up getting 2 breweries. So they had one at one end of the downtown and one at the other. And if you talk to Downtown Wytheville, who was the applicant, now they would say that their work with the boutique hotel and their work with CBL really helped them to jumpstart their current project, which is the rehabilitation of the Millwall Theater. So having a critical mass of storefronts or vacant properties be filled as a result of CBL really creates that excitement and support for local entrepreneurs that they know they can be successful in that community. And then one question that we always get is, do entrepreneurs taking part in the program get super competitive or kind of cutthroat about the funding? And the fact of the matter is, if you're doing it right, and I think most of our communities, if not all, have, because we've never had the issue, but what generally happens is the entrepreneurs that are in that class really band together in support of each other. And they help each other find the resources that are necessary and help to continue that success past the end of the grant program. So who can apply? We've had a variety of different types of organizations apply, but generally they're local governments or nonprofit organizations. So we've had town governments apply, city governments apply, economic development authorities, nonprofit organizations such as our local Main Street organizations, but also those entrepreneurial support organizations such as the Advancement Foundation. And then we've also had some chambers of commerce. So all of those types of entities are eligible to apply. So for this round of funding, we have $180,000 projected for the funding pool of fiscal year 23, which is the one you would be applying for. And the maximum award that you can receive for community business launch is $90,000. And then from there, it's kind of a tiered system. So if you apply for $90,000, you'd be required to match that 1-to-1 with an additional $90,000 and a $30,000 cash minimum. And then so on down to $60,000, 50% match, and $45,000 at 25% match. Now you'll see, you're probably wondering, what's that cash minimum? What does that mean? Well, we require that 50% of the CBL fund that you receive be used towards pitch prizes. And that cash minimum is also what goes towards those pitch prizes. So that's just cash that goes directly into the pot for competition funding. And then, of course, you don't have to apply for exactly 45, exactly 60. Let us know what you need, and it's kind of scaled on our website, and I'll send the link at the end. We have a program design, and it kind of tells you what those tiers are and how much you would be required to match based on what you ask for. So how are you allowed to use the funding? Well, we acknowledge that it takes a lot of coordination and effort to put this kind of program together. So obviously it can be used for administration of the program, someone who's helping to operate the day-to-day activities of completing the grant program. You can use it for outreach. So reaching out to potential business owners, people who may be interested in competing in the pitch competition and taking part in the classes, but also getting in touch with those building owners that you think have a vacant space and might be interested in having someone fill it from the competition. Up to 30% of the funds from CBL can be used for business class training and post-competition mentorship and counseling. So think whatever organization you may partner with to put on the actual business classes themselves. We've seen a lot of localities that apply and communities that apply work with the Small Business Development Center, and they may give them some sort of stipend to put on those classes. So 30% of those funds can be used for that, in addition to post-competition mentorship. So ideally, CBL doesn't end once your businesses have pitched and got money. You know, you're going to want to continue working with them and providing them assistance so they can continue to be successful in your community. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, at least 50% of our funds have to go to the pitch prizes themselves. And then from that pool of funds that go directly to those businesses that compete, they can be used by those businesses as working in operational capital. They can use it for rent on a building that they choose to fill, any kind of property improvements or upfitting that they'd like to make it more their own, equipment for their business, inventory, and wages for new employees, in addition to obviously marketing and getting the word out about their new business. So what do we expect? Our basic metrics for community business launch is that each community or organization that applies, has at least 3 new or expanded businesses result out of the program, creates at least 5 net new full-time equivalent jobs, and then provides additional follow-up replications of CBL, so continuing CBL or doing another cycle outside of our grant funding, and building that entrepreneurial ecosystem that will continue to support those entrepreneurs in your community from now into the future. For the timeline, the grant has already opened. It opened on February 1st, and it will continue to be open for applications through the 28th of April. Generally, right after that closes in early May, we will begin scoring each of the applications that we receive, and then we put in a briefing packet with our recommendation to the governor's office. At that point, it's out of our hands, and we are at the governor's will to submit, or to make those announcements. But generally, it happens in early summer to fall, September timeframe. And then in the fall, once the awards have been made and the governor has made those announcements, we would reach out to the communities that were awarded to schedule contract negotiations and get those contracts signed. And then from November into January, you'll market the competition, get your classes in order. You'll conduct your classes in early 2023 with the idea that by April and May, you would have had the pitch competition and the award ceremony for those who won the pitch competition. And then those businesses have between May and September of 2023 to open it. So they have to be open in that community in the designated area that's selected by September 30th of next year. So here's a little bit about the application itself. So it's a mixture of narrative questions along with attachments that you will have to upload. But the narrative itself is really only 7 questions in total that focus on mainly administration of the grant. So how do you intend to carry out the program? Who's going to be in charge of the day-to-day management? Who's going to be in charge of the fiscal resources? We want to know the general operations that you've really thought out, who's going to be running the program and picking up different responsibilities. We want to hear about the partners that you've coordinated with to support the program. So, generally the first thing that comes to mind is the organization that you're working with to put on the actual business classes themselves. But it could also be a chamber of commerce who's going to offer like a free year membership to the chamber for anyone participating in the program. So tell us about who you're working with and how they will help you make this program successful. We focus a good bit on your vacancy inventory and a market analysis. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in future slides to give you some more detail. And then most importantly, we just want to know what your program is going to look like. Tell us about what classes you're going to include, how much funding you're projecting to give out, and what do those prize packages look like? How do you intend to help these entrepreneurs be successful past the CBL program end? So we just want to kind of hear what you guys have set up for yourselves and what you envision for your own community. So the other application elements that we have that are items to upload into that application, many of you have maybe gone into CAMS before and submitted an application. So there is a place where you basically input your budget and show us what matching funds that you're bringing to that specific project. You'll upload an inventory of your vacancies, a map of the area that you're targeting, a list or a draft class curriculum, so what you're intending to have for your classes. We want to see how you intend to score those who go into the pitch competition, what your retention service plan is post business pitch competition, and the timeline, and of course letters of support. I'm going to go back and look at some of the questions in the chat, but I did see someone ask if past grantees can apply, and the answer is yes. So that's something that actually changed recently, I think as recently as last year. If you have applied previously, you are now eligible to reapply, hopefully for a new area within your community. But yes, it is open to people who have applied in the past or received funding in the past for CBL. So for an inventory of vacant storefronts and available properties, we're really looking for a map. So we want to see a map of the area that you are focusing on, and on that map kind of showing us where your vacancies, or if there's any sort of available properties that you're focusing on. And in addition to that, we actually have a template for a property description sheet, which kind of gives us an idea. It matches up with the map that you provided. So it's going to tell us what the address is, if you know the owner of the building, if you've contacted them about CBL. And what we're really getting to here is that CBL is not an easy program to put on if there is no cooperation from your local business or building owners. So we want to see that you have some sort of communication with them. You know if they're willing to sell or rent. You know what typically the going rate is. If they're willing to make any updates to the space for a new business to move in. So we just want to see that you have that communication with the building owners to make sure that you're that the resource is there and the help is there when you have new businesses to move in. We also want you to think a little bit about and upload your market analysis. Now, some communities will have had a market analysis completed by a third party. And if you have that, we want to see it. We would love for you to share it with us. For those of you that haven't gone through this process, we're really looking for you to answer these main 4 questions, which is, do you have a current market analysis and have identified customer characteristics for your business district? What are your 3 customer groups? So a good way to look at this is, say you're Lexington and you have some colleges in your community. Well, one of your 3 important customer groups might be students. So what kind of businesses would you target that you think students would be interested in? So that's kind of the 3rd question. Business types that you're targeting for each of those customer groups. And then essentially, what type of businesses do you want in your community? We've also seen people who apply also just do a basic survey. And, I think surveys are very helpful to get the general pulse of your community and what they might be interested in seeing in that designated area. But I do think it's important to really put some critical thought into, what is your district missing? What do people continuously say that they want to see, and who shops there? Who shops in that area, and what would they be interested in? So that is another item that we have you upload as part of your application. We will also ask that you upload a draft class curriculum. So whatever organization that you might be working with that's providing the business planning classes, we want to see kind of what topics they're going to hit on. And most importantly, we want to make sure that they're covering really the basics. So creating a business plan, understanding the legal setup of a business, the legal structure of a business, learning about finances such as cash flow, and then marketing and knowing your market and understanding who your customers are as an entrepreneur. Now, we realize that some things can change from when you submit the application to when you actually carry out the program, and that's okay. That's part of contract negotiations, and we will work with you to update those sort of things. We also want to see a pitch scoring rubric. So when you have your businesses compete, you're obviously going to have some sort of scorecard in which you can rank their business plans. But the important part of this too is, and something you should 100% include in your scoring is, you went through the trouble of doing a market analysis. Now, show us that this kind of business is going through the program does meet that critical market need within your community. So we want to know that they've completed their business plan, that it aligns with your strategy, that it aligns with your target market, what that potential economic impact might look like. So just show us how you intend to score those who go forward with the pitch competition. I've touched on this a couple of times now, but we would also like, as an attachment to the grant application, a business retention service plan. So just tell us how you plan to assist entrepreneurs past CBL. The grant itself is a year long, meaning that the grant is technically ended after a year after it started, but we want to know that you're going to continue to support those entrepreneurs past the end of that grant date. Making sure that you have a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem really depends on making sure that those resources are available, making sure there is someone available to help them. Because I know, like many businesses during the pandemic, there were new circumstances in which they needed to pivot, and those types of resources were critical in making sure that they were successful in the long term. We also want to see what your project timeline is. So again, this is kind of like the rubric, but these dates might change a little bit based on when the grant is announced and the contracts are signed, but give us a general idea of when you'd like to start it, when you'd like classes to end, when you would have your pitch competition and award ceremony, and how you would kind of lay it out. And this kind of gives us an idea too, if are you having a once a week class? Is it in the evenings? Give us an idea of what that generally looks like. We also want to see letters of support. So if you are partnering with another organization to make this a reality, tell us about it. Show us, especially if you have financial supporters or other organizations in your community that are providing money to help support the program, and the pitch competition winners, of course, include them. If you are using someone to help provide the business counseling, we would love to see a letter of support from them, and any other kind of organization in your community that you pull together to support entrepreneurs. So it could also be people who are providing in-kind support. We've had in the past local attorneys or local finance folks kind of do in-kind services to those businesses that are starting up, since obviously that is an expense when you're starting a business, is really understanding your financial situation and setting up that legal entity. So those are other ideas or possibilities of letters of support. Now for applying in CAMS. Many of you have probably applied for grants in CAMS in the past. But if you have never worked in CAMS, you will have to create a profile before you can submit an application. The link here is the one that you would use to register that. If you need to do that, we would suggest doing it as soon as possible, because it does have to be approved on our end. So do that as soon as you can. The locality or organization, whoever is going to be applying for the grant itself, is the organization or locality that needs to create a profile. And then once you're in there, if you're going to have multiple people working on the application, you can add additional people and assign roles within CAMS. So that way, it's not confusing. You're not passing around the same passwords. And then we do suggest that you use Internet Explorer or Chrome as the recommended browsers. They're generally a little less finicky when using CAMS. And then this is something that I harp on relentlessly. But if you are in the application system, creating an application, be sure to save after everything you enter. If you don't save after you've entered something, it will delete the work that you've already inputted. And there's probably nothing more frustrating than that. So be sure that you save as often as possible. And then once you submit that application in CAMS, you will receive an email telling you that we have received it. So that's a great way to know whether or not it actually went through and that we've got it in our system. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. Let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go down in the chat here and start from the top. Can there be exceptions to who can apply? That was from Jennifer Goldman. I would love to know what you might mean by that. If Jennifer is here, that could comment.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself there first.
That's okay.
So Rebecca and I were chatting a little bit more about it. I have a company that is a nonprofit consultant firm, and I have a program that would fit perfectly into this. And was thinking if I could apply for the grant, then I could take it to a Main Street program in town. But from the things you said and the things that Rebecca said also, it sounds like there needs to be all the partnerships in place first.
Yes.
So I will be reaching out to you guys to figure out where there are some vacancies that I might speak to organizations and cities to see if we can partner ahead of time.
Perfect. And I'm sure there are some communities or organizations on the call that would be interested in that help. So
that would be great.
Yes. Sorry. And I didn't realize later in the chat that they had kind of answered that for you. But
yeah, we were chatting along. Thank you, though.
I already said past grantees can apply. Are there examples of scoring rubrics that we could refer to as we design ours? Absolutely. We have several from communities that have done them in the past, and I'm happy to provide that information. If you want to shoot me an email after the fact, I'd be happy to send you one. Can joint applications be made, i.e. between chamber, Main Street organization, and town government? So I have follow-up questions for that. The idea would be that all of those organizations would partner on one application, but it would just be one organization who files or submits the application. So, for example, if it's, I'm just going to select a downtown the Senate, Lexington Main Street. If Lexington Main Street was going to partner with their local chamber of commerce and their local town government, they would all make one application within CAMS. Does that answer your question, Joyce?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That was all that was in the chat box, but I'm happy to open it up to anyone who wants to kind of unmute and ask any questions that they have. That went much quicker than I had anticipated. So let me know if you have any questions. Give it just a sec. It looked like maybe Joyce might ask a question, but oh, Amy McWilliams, you raised your hand. Feel free to ask your question.
Hi, Jessica. My question is around any permitting delays that might happen within local government in the process of a business getting opened by a deadline.
Yes. Ideally, especially if you're going to apply, you would have some leadway, but ideally you would want to work with those local planning and zoning departments to make sure that that they're aware that there's some sort of way to expedite the process for businesses going through the program. I don't know if that really answers your question. Another way to answer that is that essentially it's rare, but there are some occasions in which we are able to extend the deadline, but it would have to be for something very critical and, outside of the hands of those specific businesses in your organization. So I would say you want to be proactive and work with the planning and zoning or the commissioner of the revenue's office to make sure that maybe there's a way to expedite that process for new businesses. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I saw Joyce said, I see one of the biggest issues as covering costs of instructors, maybe administrators. What do you mean? So you can use up to 30% of CBL funds to cover the cost of those instructors or business classes.
I just wasn't sure if that was going to be enough for that.
Oh yeah,
for a small town, if we'd be able to raise enough money to cover those kinds of costs.
Yeah. Well, so there are, I would say that a lot of organizations, especially like the small business development centers, If there's one near your community, they're generally a lot cheaper than maybe going through like a CoStar's curriculum or something like that. Yep, David said, try to reach out to the SVDCs in your area if available. Yep,
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, good. We already have an established relationship with them.
Perfect. And honestly, they do this every day, so they really know what's needed for that kind of curriculum. So not only are they knowledgeable about the process, but they're also generally cheaper and easier to work with.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Is there anyone who intends on applying that would like to share? Well, I'm excited. Oh. Go ahead.
This is Jacqueline Tucker. This is my first time sitting in on a platform like this, and so I'm hearing a lot of great detailed information. But yet I feel really green, and I don't know if I'm in the right place or not. But I'm looking to do a resource center. Be like a liaison. I've been doing a couple of things through communities here, so I was just looking for some space to actually operate from. So I don't know if I'm in the right place or not, or
yeah,
like I said, and they're the green.
Yeah, that's okay.
Tell me your name again.
Jacqueline Tucker.
Jacqueline, I'm going to give you my phone number. My name is Rebecca Rowe, ROWE. Oh,
Okay.
you're all about to get my phone number. No texting me in the middle of the night, people. But my number is 804 517 7696.
Okay, I have 804-517-7696.
That's me. I am honestly in meetings for the rest of today, but give me a try tomorrow afternoon. And I'm not sure that this is the correct resource for you, but I'd like to talk to you and see if we can find the right resource.
Oh, okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
And since you brought that up, that's one thing that I like to share is that I will work with anyone directly. Even if you are just floating the idea, you're not sure where to start, but you think maybe CBL could be good for your community or organization, you can call me anytime and I can walk you through the process. I don't know that any community really applies for CBL knowing exactly what they're doing from the start. And you definitely learn as you go. You will get thrown things that you never expected. So please, I ask and offer to anyone who's interested to reach out to me and just talk through the program. There's no obligation for you to apply, but if you just want a sounding board or someone to provide advice, I'm happy to do so. I've also offered in the past to kind of look over an application before it's submitted to see if there's anything that you might be missing. And then, of course, there are some communities throughout the state who have already completed CBL, and they are excellent resources to learning a little bit of how it actually happened in that community. And I know a number that would be more than willing to connect with you and tell you a little bit about how their program worked. So if there's no more questions, I am going to drop my information in the chat box. And you are welcome to reach out to me at any time with any additional questions that you may have. And I hope that you don't hesitate to call if you have questions. So thank you everyone so much for being here today, and hope to see some amazing applications this round. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
And Leslie Crawford, are you still on?
Thank you.
If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, let's talk. What locality are you with? And to unmute yourself is the little microphone icon next to the video icon.